Press Pause TV, and today I've got a school principal with me. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Kelly Slater-Brown, who is principal of Bucklands Beach Primary School, which is a multicultural school in Auckland, New Zealand. Kelly's going to give parents tips on how to manage their children while at home under the Covid-19 situation, which I think will be really helpful for everybody. In her role as a principal, Kelly has introduced positive behaviour for learning, and her whole leadership focuses on developing strong relationships with whole learning communities in order to give the students the best possible learning experience. Kelly's also worked at Auckland University at the Centre for Leadership, and she's also presented leadership research internationally. So Kelly's pretty well known over here. So Kelly, what are some of the challenges you've had to overcome in your school?
Dan, thanks for that lovely welcome. When I took over my school, there was certainly some very challenging student behaviour, which took quite a lot of work to get on top of. I had to transform a staff so that we had a culture of respectful relationships and ready to learn and grow. So that sort of had been quite a big challenge to overcome. And more recently, having to support staff through the tragic death of one of their children. So that's sort of been some of the things that I've done in the last few years.
My understanding of what you've achieved is you've literally turned your school around. So with the recent situation with COVID-19, how did you prepare your school for a pandemic?
I think in a normal situation, you get a bit more time to think about and consider what you're going to do, and you actually have some experts that you can tap into and some reading and things, whereas this has very much been a pandemic of fast proportion, I think. So what we could do is have a look at what were the things that we forecast that we would need in order for this pandemic to, if it did play out, how we could help it run smoothly, like how would we flip over to online learning? What do we need to know from parents? What do we need to know from teachers? So it was about trying to stay a couple of steps ahead of the game and collect that sort of data so that we could be as prepared as we could be, while also considering the people factor. You know, who was being impacted by this already? What could we see going on? Who had relatives overseas and was under stress? So making sure that we were supporting those people from the offset.
So really the bottom line was thinking ahead, having a vision and having a plan, but particularly geared around people and how people were going to interact and communicate and carry on the learning for your students where possible.
Absolutely. Yep. I think people have to sit at the front and centre of all the planning.
So right now with the COVID-19 situation, which obviously is impacting the whole world, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing teachers right now?
I think that there are expectation that you'll take what you were doing at school and be able to deliver that from home. And of course you can't, because it's not the same situation. It's a completely different situation. So it's about helping teachers to develop and stick to what are our important core things that we want to be teaching from our school at home. So we've had a good look at our school values and thought about how does this play out in this newly transitioned and this new way of teaching. And I'll give the example of relationships. So in the holidays, my teachers have been very keen to have online morning teas, and they've understood that actually we need to see each other and talk to each other, and that's really important. And therefore they took that idea and said, well, how are we going to do this with our students? So finding ways to have face-to-face time with them each day that's going to work for them and for the families that they're working with. So I guess it's about finding together this new way of working. You know, we clearly know the why, and letting them discover together with some guidance from us and supporting each other the how.
So it's really about getting a grounded form of connection where people can continue to communicate on a daily basis and support each other through this and adapt quickly where needed.
Absolutely. And it's come back from the parents how much the kids are loving actually just seeing their teacher's face. And actually that's made everything normal. And I've got a lovely email a kid sent me from the holidays about what he did in the holidays and how they just can't wait to see their teachers. That's what they're looking forward to tomorrow more than anything. So I think that speaks volumes about what's really important right now.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it's really interesting as well. A lot of people, obviously they're in their home environment. So, the kids are getting to see their teachers in a completely different light. And it's more transparent, more personal. So they're getting a deeper sense of connection as well.
Yes, and I think that's what I've tried to do as well as a leader. I sent them out an Easter letter. I said, normally we'd be in assembly and I'd be saying, have a happy Easter and be good to your parents. And then I just took some photographs of what I've been doing around the holidays and with my kids and baking and the dog and the chicken, and sent that out to the kids. And I've had a few responses come back today, and it's been lovely for me. So I'm hoping they're feeling that same way, having received something from me, the way I'm feeling from receiving something from them.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that parents are facing at the moment, other than obviously having their kids at home the whole time? And they may be working, some of them, but some of them, they may not be working, and then they're all shoehorned into one small space. So what do you think some of the challenges are that they're facing at the moment?
Probably what you've just described. Exactly that, where you're trying to, you're used to having your weekend family or your evening family, and suddenly you've got everything all in one space at all the same time. And I think as kids, they feel really safe and secure when they've got a nice routine, and it doesn't need to be like a school, not a rigid at all, but I just think there need to be some expectations around what you want from your kids every day, and then they know what you want, and then there's that nice secure feeling, I think, both ways of what we're expecting of each other.
And what about the kids? What do you think, some of their challenges is? I mean, obviously, some of them are thinking, yay, it's a great holiday. But what do you think some of the challenges they're having to deal with at the moment?
Oh, I think it was exciting for the first few days, and then things like boredom fit in, and they're very social creatures. They spend a lot of time at school interacting with each other. So I know many of our parents have picked up on using Google Meet and have got kids talking to each other, my own kids talking to their friends. They really miss that social interaction as well. And it is a scary time. There is scary stuff going on. So they pick up on our anxiety. So I think it's about limiting how much are you talking about COVID-19 and watching COVID-19, and are you just giving them a short update perhaps, and then looking at, well, how many people have recovered, or aren't we lucky we're in New Zealand, look how good we're doing, and sort of parking that side and making sure there's other good things in their day as well. About finding those moments of what we're grateful for, because we've got a lot to be grateful for, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that parents do communicate with their children about the COVID-19, because, a lot of people, when it's a strange situation, they often don't want to share with children, but children know and they pick these things up anyway. So I think it really is about communicating, but in a way that is not terrifying to them, and in a structured way. And as you say, limiting their ability to watch the news and things like that, I think is really important. As a school principal, what do you think? We've had lots of different information from different people about how parents can manage with kids at home. But what are some things that you think are really important? You mentioned routine. What other things do you think would help things run more smoothly for parents stuck at home with their kids right now?
Yeah, definitely the routine, without a doubt. And I just have to say at this point, please don't go on social media and look at what other people are doing. Like if I go to the teacher Facebook page, everyone's putting up the very best thing they've done. No one's putting up the crappy day they've had when they're still in their pajamas. Don't be looking there and thinking, oh, I'm inadequate, or you've got to make it work for your environment. I mean, my husband and I are both in education. Our children are probably getting the least input from anyone, because we're actually spending a lot of time inputting for other kids at the moment, but that's okay. They're happy with what they're doing. Each of our children are different. 2 of our children will diligently get on with their work, and the 3rd one needs lots of breaks and creative things in between. So build in the things that your kids need during the day. For my middle one, I make sure I do 2 or 3 really creative things each day. I think for yourself as well, have some boundaries around time out. My 3rd child would be by my side all the time. If I go into my room and shut the door, she knows it means mum needs 10 minutes by herself. I'll be out soon. I'm just having some breathing space. It's not expecting everyone to do everything. You're not teachers. I actually think their well-being right now is really, really important. like that family exercise. That's really important. You don't want to go for a walk and then you go out and you come back, and notice how everyone's mood has changed. I think everyone picks up from having that bit of physical exercise, which I think is really important as well. For my own kids, I've got them involved in planning meals. So they pick a meal each that they want to cook with either myself or my husband. Then I make sure I do the shopping and get all the ingredients. And then because it's their meal, they chose it, they're involved in it, they cook it, they get excited about it. That's been another really good way of getting them involved in the kind of the house routine as well. And my eldest son, he's a teenager. He'd sort of quite happily sit on social media all day, but we do have some boundaries around it. And he did say, Mum, I'd like longer. And I said, well, that's fine, but how about you earn it? How about you have to spend 30 minutes playing a game with your siblings and another half an hour outside doing a job with me, just to make sure we're keeping that social connection. I've also made a point of going walking one-on-one with my kids. So in the afternoon, I'll just take one of them just to have a real good, deep chat about how you're feeling, how you're doing. And that's sort of, I'm finding where I'm getting the most from my eldest son, when he'll tend to talk up about, oh, it's a little bit scary, or however he's feeling at that particular time. Every household's different. Every kid's different. Finding the things that work for you, I think, is important.
Yeah, I think that's important all round. Having guidelines for other people is really important, and especially from, someone that is in education and deals with kids all the time. And I think boundaries are very important with regards to helping people feel safe. Their kids feel safe. It's much like animals when you discipline them, having a boundary around screen time, TV time, but also having some family connection and doing it your way, but with some structure and routine. I think that's really important. And that creativity, enabling them to, grow through planning meals. It's developing them into adults that are healthy and can manage life as well as education, which I think is really important.
I think it's an important skill too. And I think it's great that they help around the house or do things for someone else. I think these are really important skills that maybe we get so busy, we just rush through. It's a great time to make the most of these things. And they'll be better cooks. They'll make better husbands and wives one day.
Yeah, and I think that working together as well, as a team and as a family, often people are out at work and they're so busy that they don't get the opportunity to do this. So as much as this is an incredibly challenging time, I think it is also a gift if we use it in a way that's constructive for the family, and, that mental health and well-being, I think, is pivotal for growing young people and adults, to be honest.
I totally agree. It's like someone stripped away all the opportunity, all the busyness, and we have this one opportunity where we can actually get really grounded and get back to actually what is really important in making this family function well. So I agree. It is a gift. And again, it's the way that you look at it and the way that you deliver it to your children as well.
Kelly, personally and as a leader, what insights have you had from maybe having this time at home with your family around balance, and maybe some things that you might do differently in school, or from having this, incubation period in our lives, really? What have you got from that?
Yeah, I think it's highlight. I mean, I've always been passionately believe in relationships driving everything, but now I believe it even more so. I'm so proud of my staff and the way they've stepped in and collaborated and helped each other. And it's actually blown me away just how much collaboration has gone on. And it's made me realize a few things. You don't need to be in the same room to collaborate, although this is ideal most of the time, but doesn't need to be all the time. I live a long way from my work, so maybe that can help me a bit with my work-life balance, when actually I can be a bit more present for my own children. So as I said before, I think things just get layered on in life and work. Suddenly as a school, I'm thinking, why do we do that? When did that creep in? Why do we do that? So I think we've got an opportunity now not to go back to how it was before, because it's never going to be that way anyway, but to go, what have we learned from this? What do we want to get rid of and keep away? What are we not going to bring back? And what are we going to bring back instead to make it work better for us? But certainly the whole relationship thing has just reinforced for me that they drive everything. And as people, we need that connection. It is the most important thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that, as you know, we work together. So that's something that's really something I wanted you to communicate your values, because they're in line with the work that I do. And as a leader of, kids and also teachers, it's really impactful that that is happening at that level, because they are the future at the end of the day. And so,
Absolutely.
I'm thank you very much for coming on here, agreeing to come on here, because I think some of the things that you've mentioned, parents may have thought about, they may be doing, but just having someone in your position to reiterate that it's actually okay, do it your way, and have some routine and structure around that, I think is, really powerful. What you're doing at the moment by keeping that connection with your team, and also having the online ability and keeping the connection with the parents and the kids is really important. And that in itself will help transition into whatever the next phase looks like, I think, just as it stands.
Yeah, and it's back to, this is the horrible part of this, because everyone's looking to me saying, what's happening? What does level 3 look like? And all I can say is, I'm really sorry, I actually don't know. And as soon as I know, you'll know. It's very unsettling for everyone, I think. And you've got to try and hold that ship and be steady and know exactly what you're doing, even when you don't. Keeping those relationships so that when we do get to that point where we know what it's going to look like, it's going to be much easier to transition back to.
And I think that's a really valid point. We all think we know a lot about what we're going to do in the future, but really the future is relatively unknown. So, if we've got that connection with people and we can communicate well and set the boundaries as we go along and have that adaptability, I think that, that works for everybody, because we really don't know, even without the COVID situation, we don't know what the future brings. We like to think we do, but we don't really.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most challenging part of this whole situation, is we always know how things are going to play out, and we are creatures of habit, and at the moment we just don't. And that's really unsettling for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is certainly unsettling. But the biggest thing that, I've heard from you today is about keeping that connection, keeping that communication, having a clear routine, and setting boundaries around what you do know, and, looking at being grateful for what we actually do have.
Yes, I agree, Suzanne.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here today, Kelly. I've given us a lot of insight. I'm looking forward to seeing what the future brings with the schooling, because I think it's going to look a little bit different in the future.
Thanks, Suzanne. It's good to come on air and talk about these things.
It certainly is.